Okay. Good morning. Last session, we concluded unit number 2 with the numericals. And today we are going to begin with the unit number 3. The unit number 3 is second law of thermodynamics. In the unit number 2, that was based on first law of thermodynamics, we saw some derivations. Then we applied first law of thermodynamics to some devices also to prove steady flow energy equation. We solved numericals based on those steady flow energy equations. And now we are going to begin with the unit number 3, that is second law of thermodynamics. Now, before beginning with the second law of thermodynamics, what was the need of the defining second law of thermodynamics? Were there some limitations associated with first law? That's why the second law came into existence. Is it like that, or second law is something different and first law is something different? Are they have some relations with each other? Do you have any idea? You can unmute and ask, or unmute and speak. If you have any idea behind the this existence of first law of thermodynamics, second law of thermodynamics, then there is third also that we will be talking in the future. So do you have any idea why this second law came into existence? If you have, unmute yourself and speak. If you don't have, just let me know. Anybody?
The amount of internal energy and heat work is not given in first law of thermodynamics.
Okay, that is one of the limitation. Very good. Anything else, Pratik? Okay, I'll do that. So there were some limitations associated with first law, and that's why the second law came into existence. Actually, directly starting with that limitations, just go through the objectives and all of the unit number 3. So we'll come to that limitations of first law within a short while. Before that, I'll skip this slide because we have talked about this slide many times in the past. So these are the course outcomes. Now you know why we define course outcomes. Course outcomes are basically the statements that defines or that says what students are supposed to be able to do at the end of the studying of the particular course. So these are the course outcomes for the thermodynamics. Now we have covered unit number 2, unit number 1 and unit number 2. So as I said earlier, CO1 is related to unit number 1, CO2 is related to unit number 2. So unit number 1 we are done with quite a lot before. So recently we have done with unit number 2. So that was based on first law of thermodynamics. So if you read the statement of CO2, that is student will be able to apply basic laws of thermodynamics to simple thermal systems like piston cylinder arrangement, compressor, pump, refrigerator, heat exchanger, etc. For what? To analyze the energy balance. So now we are done with unit number 2. If you read this statement, can you say that you will be able to achieve this CO2? Can you? Pratik, do you find that you are now able to attain this second CO? Pratik, do you think so?
No.
Right? You should be, or you must be, in fact, because we have seen first law of thermodynamics. We have applied that first law of thermodynamics to all the devices that has been enlisted over here, and we have derived their energy balance equations. We have solved numericals based on those equations. So now I should be able to attain this second CO, right? So as we are going to begin with unit number 3, the course outcome related to unit number 3 is student will be able to describe the limitations of first law of thermodynamics. As we are going to start with limitations of first law. In the beginning itself, you will be able to identify the need of defining second law, or what was the limitations associated with first law of thermodynamics. Because of those limitations, the second law came into existence. So that you will be able to do. And what is the second part of CO3? And apply second law of thermodynamics to various thermodynamic systems. So that you are going to be able to do, because we are going to apply this law to various devices like heat engine, refrigerator, heat pump, and we are going to solve numericals based on those devices also. So you will be definitely able to attain this CO3 also. So let's move further. This is mapping of CO with various POs, for that is program outcomes. That part also we have covered. Okay. So these are the objectives of unit number 3. Just like unit number 1, unit number 2, at the beginning of those units, we used to discuss some objectives. Why we are going to study the particular unit. So before starting the unit number 3, let's go through the objectives. So first objective is enlist the limitations of first law of thermodynamics. Yes, you are going to study the limitations of first law of thermodynamics. So you would be able to list out those limitations or discuss those limitations. Then second objective is introduce the second law of thermodynamics. Yes, you will be able to do that also. The second law of thermodynamics has got two statements. We are going to talk about those individual statements. We are going to prove that equivalence between those statements and all. So third objective is identify valid processes that satisfy both first and second law of thermodynamics. So we are going to prove equivalence between those two statements by choosing such a devices those are going to violate one of those two. Second law of thermodynamics has got two statements. If one of the statements is statement is violated, the second one is going to be ultimately violated. So by using that one, additionally, we are going to consider first law of thermodynamics also, and we'll be talking about the devices, which devices are going to follow first law of thermodynamics as well as second law of thermodynamics combinedly. If one of the devices there that is following first law of thermodynamics but not following second law of thermodynamics, that device is not going to be work, right? So each and every device has to be satisfying first law of thermodynamics as well as second law also. So that we'll be talking about. Next, discuss thermal energy reservoirs. So we'll be talking about what is mean by thermal reservoir, what are the characteristics of thermal reservoir, or when we can say a particular source as a thermal energy reservoir, that we'll be talking about. Then reversible and irreversible processes. We have covered this part in the past also. We'll be talking this part, reversible and irreversible process again with some different perspective. Then heat engines, refrigerators, and heat pumps. These are the three devices that we are going to study in detail: heat engine, refrigerator, and heat pump. Next objective is describe the Kelvin-Planck and Clausius statement. This Kelvin-Planck and Clausius statement, these two are the statements of second law of thermodynamics. Just like first law of thermodynamics was having only one statement, but second law of thermodynamics is combination of two statements. First one is called as Kelvin-Planck statement and second one is called as Clausius statement. So we are going to study those two statements in a detail. Next, discuss the concept of perpetual motion machines. Now, while studying the unit number 1 that was based on first law of thermodynamics, we studied one device that is called as perpetual motion machine of first kind, or PMM1. Can any one of you tell me what is the PMM1, or how we get the PMM1? Anybody, unmute yourself and speak. What exactly is PMM1? Anybody?
Sir, it is an imaginary machine.
Very good.
It does not exist, and
It is
it
imaginary
says that if
machine. Okay.
we can get work output without applying
Input.
without giving any input.
Very good. Very good. So, PMM1, or perpetual motion machine of first kind, it is basically a machine that violates first law of thermodynamics. The device that violates first law of thermodynamics is called as PMM1. Similarly, we'll be talking about PMM2 also. So from the discussion of PMM1 itself, you can get easily that the PMM2 is the device that violates second law of thermodynamics, right? So the one which violates first law of thermodynamics is a PMM1. The one violates the second law of thermodynamics is the PMM2, perpetual motion machine of second kind. So we'll be talking about that one also. The next objective is apply the second law of thermodynamics to cycles and cyclic devices. So just like first law of thermodynamics, we are going to apply second law of thermodynamics to various real life devices, and we are going to solve numericals based on those devices. Next, determine the expression for thermal efficiencies and coefficient of performance for reversible heat engines, heat pumps, and refrigerators. In case of heat engines, the performance parameter is called as efficiency, whereas in case of heat pump and refrigerator, the performance parameter is called as coefficient of performance, or that is also called as COP. That is basically short form of coefficient of performance. So when it comes to heat engine, we consider efficiency, whereas in case of heat pumps and refrigerator, we consider COP, that is coefficient of performance. So we are going to derive those relations and we are going to solve numericals as well. The next one is describe the Carnot cycle. Carnot cycle is again another imaginary cycle that was defined by Sadi Carnot, and till date there isn't any live example of Carnot cycle. It is imaginary hypothetical cycle. The cycle itself has got certain limitations which are impossible to overcome, and because of that one, till date there isn't any live example based on the Carnot cycle. So that is again a imaginary cycle. And last one objective is discuss the working principle of Carnot heat engine, refrigerator, and heat pump. So we are going to study their working principles, working cycles in details. So these are the objectives that are going to be satisfied while going through the unit number 3. Okay. So let's begin with the limitations of first law of thermodynamics. So one of the limitation was told by Pratik. Pratik told us that it doesn't give the amount of energy that could be converted into useful work. Is that right, Pratik, what you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that is one of the limitation. What is the limitation? It doesn't talk about the amount of energy that could be converted into useful work. For example, if you consider a heat engine, suppose there is heat engine, from one end it is taking heat Q1, it is producing W1. Along with this W1, it is supposed to reject some heat Q2. This Q2 is never going to be zero. Okay? Always it is going to reject some heat to the atmosphere or low temperature sink. The source from where it accepts the energy is called as source, and the energy or the another device where the heat is being released or rejected, that is called as sink. So if it takes Q1 from the source and producing W1, it is supposed to reject some Q2 to the sink, and that is always going to be non-zero quantity, right? So there is certain relation between this Q1 and W1, and that is called as efficiency. Efficiency is nothing but the output to the input. That is the general definition of efficiency. In case of heat engine, output is this work produced by the engine, and input is the heat supplied to the engine. So if you take ratio of those two, that will be nothing but the efficiency. Now, first law of thermodynamics never talk about this term efficiency. What first law says? Energy can neither be created, energy can nor destroyed. It can be converted from one form of energy to the another. Now, while saying that energy can be converted from one form to another, there should have been specified that if one form of energy is converted into another form, what amount of energy is going to be converted directly into another form, and what amount of energy is going to be lost in that conversion process. But that has never considered by the first law of thermodynamics. That is the first limitation. Another limitation you can get from the slide itself. Okay. If I keep a cup of hot coffee in an open atmosphere, right? If I keep a cup of hot coffee in an open atmosphere, I am saying hot coffee. A hot coffee, it means that its temperature is going to be higher than the atmospheric temperature. Okay. Now, if I keep it in open atmosphere, it is obvious that heat is going to be transferred from coffee or hot cup of coffee to the atmosphere, right? That is but obvious. But if I say that instead of heat being transferred from hot coffee to cold atmosphere, heat is being transferred from cold atmosphere to hot coffee, am I violating first law of thermodynamics? Anybody can respond. Unmute yourself and say. If I say instead of coffee in the cup being colder, its temperature is further increasing by accepting heat from the cold atmosphere, am I violating first law of thermodynamics?
No, sir.
No, right? But whatever I just said, you can easily get that that is not going to be possible. The most obvious process is transfer of heat from hot cup of coffee to the atmosphere. But even if I say that hot coffee is getting further hotter instead of being colder, in that case also the first law never gets violated. So that is one of the limitation. Okay. Similarly, another example to prove this point, we talked about the Joule's experiment. This diagram you can easily relate to the Joule's experiment itself. What we did in the Joule's experiment, if I move this weight upward or downward, this shaft will rotate that is connected to this stirrer, and because of rotation of this one, the fluid will get disturbed and its temperature will increase. So if I provide work as an input, I can get a thermal energy, right? Now, by considering first law of thermodynamics, if I start hitting this pedal, will I get a work as output?
No, sir.
No, right? In direct sense, if I provide heat to this pedal, its temperature will increase depending upon the material properties, it will start melting and all. But in any case, I am not going to get work as an output by heating this pedal, right? So that indicates the limitation of first law of thermodynamics, because first law says that Q can be converted into W and W can be converted into Q. Those two are interconvertible according to first law of thermodynamics. But now we know that one energy can be converted into another, but another cannot be converted into the first one directly. We can convert heat into work also, but for that one we need to use some additional devices, like we'll provide heat to water, water will be get converted into steam, that steam can be then bombarded on this stirrer, and if this stirrer rotates, then we can produce work output. But in direct sense, if single device is used for the conversion of heat into work, same device cannot be used for the conversion of work into heat, either in the same amount, at least in the same amount, right? So that is the limitation of first law of thermodynamics. Another example of the same limitation is whenever current passes through a current carrying conductor, its temperature will increase, right? Now, if I heat that conductor, can I convert that heat into electricity? In direct sense, no, right? We can convert heat into electricity again by using the same boiler and turbine system, but in the same system where when current passes through that current carrying conductor, if its temperature is increasing, heating that current carrying conductor is never going to get the electricity again. Srikar, yes, you want to say something?
Yes, sir.
You unmuted yourself, so you want to say something, or that was a mistake? If that was mistake, mute yourself. Okay. So these are the examples of limitation of first law. Additional, so let's enlist those exact limitations. The first limitation is the first law does not help to predict whether the certain process is possible or not. So we know that now if same device is used for the conversion of heat into work, same device cannot be used for the reverse conversion. And if that process is possible or not, that cannot be said on the basis of first law of thermodynamics. Second limitation is first law does not give info about the direction. Just like in this example, if heat is going to transferred from hot cup of coffee to atmosphere or atmosphere to hot cup of coffee, first law never talks about direction of these processes or direction of that heat transfer. So that is the another limitation of first law of thermodynamics. Next one, it does not provide specify, so does not provide and specify sufficient conditions to process takes place. Uh, to elaborate this statement, I will take one example. Just like over here, the first law says that heat could be converted into work and work could be converted into heat. But now we know that work can be converted into heat easily. Even if you are riding a bicycle and if you apply a brake, that kinetic energy is going to convert it into heat, right? But can you convert that heat into kinetic energy again? Means if you hit that brake pedal, will it be converted into kinetic energy possessed by that bicycle earlier or before applying the brake? No, right? So those conditions under which heat can be converted into work and work can be converted into heat, those conditions were never specified by the first law of thermodynamics. So these are the limitations associated with the first law of thermodynamics. So now, do you have any doubt about these limitations or in the discussion of those limitations? You can unmute yourself and ask, or else I will proceed further. I'll wait for a few seconds to have your responses, or else I'll begin with the next part. Okay, I'll take it as you don't have any doubt. Okay, very good. The example of that limitation itself, this is a IC engine, internal combustion engine, where you will provide heat by the combustion of fuel. So that is going to be input to the system, right? Now, when you provide this input to the system, it will provide work output. But now we know that this Q fuel is not going to be converted by 100% into W. Why? Because there is going to be Q friction that is going out of the system. So one of the loss. Q cooling water, that is another heat loss. Q cooling oil, that is going to be another loss. Additionally, the exhaust gases going out of the system, those gases are also going to carry some heat, right? So this is a real life example because there is going to be involvement of friction. Because of friction or to avoid friction, you may have to apply lubricants. So those lubricants are going to carry some heat. But in ideal case also, if there isn't any friction, we are not required to use lubricants and all. In that case also, this Q cannot be converted into W in 100% amount. There is always going to be some Q exhaust. Okay. So first law never talks about this Q exhaust. It just says that Q can be converted into W, W can be converted into Q. But now we know that Q cannot be converted in 100% into W. There has to be some additional heat loss incurred. Okay. So how the second law is going to be useful now? Now just we have discussed the limitations of first law. So now if I say how this second law is going to be useful, the first use is going to be we can state the direction of the process, because now we know actual direction in which process is going to occur naturally. Just from the example of that hot cup of coffee, the heat is going to transfer from high temperature to low temperature. So that way we can say the direction of the process. Second, now we can talk about the quality of energy. Now this is quite interesting thing, but as we have got around 1.5 minutes to end the first session, instead of discussing this one, I'll wait for the 1.5 minutes. We'll begin with the next session, and then I'll discuss this exactly is quality of energy and how it is going to help in studying the conversion from one form to the another. That we'll discuss in the next session. I think I should end this meeting and begin with the next one. So all of you are supposed to join the meeting with the same link. I'm going to end this one. Okay. So while discussing the uses of second law of thermodynamics, so the first was, now you can predict the direction of the process, in which direction process is going to occur. And second one is quality of energy. Now, what is this quality of energy and why it wasn't there when we were talking about first law of thermodynamics, and how it came into existence when people started studying the second law of thermodynamics. So the basically quality in the sense, the energy has got two qualities. First one is called as high grade energy and another one is called as low grade energy. Now, the example of high grade energy, or if you just talk about the heat and work, the work is example of high grade energy and heat is example of low grade energy. So what is this low grade and high grade now? Now, if you are converting one of the form of high grade energy into other form of energy, let it be high grade or low grade energy. But when you are converting one of the high grade energy into some other form, the efficiency is going to be always higher. Okay. Reverse to that, whenever you are converting low grade energy into some other form, let it be low grade energy or high grade energy, the efficiency is going to be always less compared to previous conversion, where the high grade energy was being converted into other form. Okay. So now if I compare the heat and work based on this one, if I'm saying that heat is low grade energy and work is high grade energy, it is very clear that whenever you are converting heat into work, the efficiency is going to be less. And whenever you are going to convert work into heat, efficiency is going to be more, right? That's why when people started studying second law of thermodynamics, they came to know that one form of energy cannot be always converted into another form, means one into another or another into one with the same efficiency. The reason is quality of energy, because one energy has got different quality and another one has got different quality. So high grade energy or high quality energy can be converted into another with more efficiency compared to low grade energy. So that is going to be a use of second law. Now the next application was theoretical limits of the systems. The theoretical limits in the sense, as I said earlier, or the first limitation said by the Pratik, that energy cannot be converted into one form to another with the same proportion always, right? When you take heat Q1 and convert it into W, we need to reject some Q2. All the energy cannot be converted into useful work. So that is nothing but the theoretical limit, and that is related to efficiency of the system. This efficiency term was not there when people were used to study the first law of thermodynamics, and this came into existence after defining the second law. Okay, so people came to know the theoretical limits of the systems through this efficiency, or through this efficiency term. Now we can easily say that under particular condition, what amount of energy can be converted into useful work and what has to be rejected to the atmosphere anyhow. Okay, so that is the application of second law. Is that clear to each one of you, or if you have any still have any ambiguity or doubt, you can ask. I'll wait for a few seconds. If you have any doubt, feel free to ask. If I don't get any response, I'll take that nobody has got any doubt. Okay. So the next thing we are going to talk about the thermal energy reservoir. I think there was one question based on thermal energy reservoir. I think last year or prior to that in the semester examination. Define the thermal energy reservoir or explain thermal energy reservoir, something like that was there. So what exactly is thermal energy reservoir? The examples could be atmosphere, river, lake, ocean. These all are the examples of thermal energy reservoir. So basically thermal energy reservoir means a body that has relatively large thermal mass, that is called as thermal energy reservoir. If you consider example of atmosphere, river, lake, ocean, they can store a large amount of thermal energy. So the device or a body that can store a large thermal energy, that is called as thermal energy reservoir. Now, if it is giving out energy or it is providing energy, that will become source, because it is providing energy to other devices or other systems or other sources. So that will become source. And if thermal energy reservoir is accepting the heat, then it will become sink. So this is also thermal energy reservoir. This is also thermal energy reservoir, but it is providing heat, so it will become source. And as it is accepting heat, it will become sink. Heat is going out of the reservoir. Heat is entering the reservoir. Somebody is talking in between. Mute yourself. Who is that? Pradeep. Pradeep Kunkar. Mute yourself. I'll mute him. No. So, thermal energy reservoir is nothing but the body which has got a large capacity to store the energy. If heat is going out of it, it will become source. If it is going into the reservoir, it will become sink. Okay. And additional property of the thermal reservoir is, let what amount of energy going out of the system, its temperature will remain constant. Means if I am saying this as a source, if I am taking heat Q from the source, its temperature is T1 before taking this Q out, and temperature is T2 after taking this Q out. This T1 is going to be equal to T2, or this T is going to remain constant. That is the characteristic of the thermal reservoir. If you are taking heat from this thermal reservoir, its temperature will remain same. If you are adding heat to the reservoir, its temperature will again remain same. So that has to be the characteristic of the thermal energy reservoir. If it's there, then you can say that body as a thermal energy reservoir. If its temperature is varying, then you cannot say it as a thermal energy reservoir. Okay. Any doubt in this point? Okay. So next thing we are going to talk about the heat engine. Now we are going to uh, discuss this one. Before that, this one is the example based on conversion of heat into work. The heat will be input provided to the heat engine and work will be the output obtained from the heat engine. So heat engine is basically a device that converts heat into useful work. So that is basic principle of the heat engine. Now, before that, if you look at this sketch, if I provide work input to this shaft, the stirrer is connected to this one and water is there. We know that if I provide work as an input, its temperature will increase and it will give heat as an output, right? Now, in natural case, if I do reverse of that, if I provide heat to the water, can I get work as output? No, right? In natural case, it is not possible. With some additional devices, we can do that. But if I consider this system only, the heat can be work can be converted into heat, but heat cannot be converted into work. So for that one, there is one device that is called as heat engine, which converts heat into work. So here, there will be one high temperature source, there will be one low temperature sink. It will be accepting heat Q in from the source, producing work W net out, and rejecting some Q out to the low temperature sink. Now there is going to be certain relation between this Q in, W net out and Q out. And to define that relation, let's go to the next slide. Okay. So this is a steam power plant. Now, if you look at the various parts of the steam power plant, this is a boiler where fuel will be burned, heat will be provided to water, water will be converted into steam. Once we have got that steam, the steam will be provided to turbine. A turbine will rotate, you will get work output, and in real life, the turbine will be connected to a generator that generates the electricity. Now, after rotating the turbine blades, the steam will be supplied to the condenser. In condenser, the heat of that steam will be taken out, that heat will be released to the atmosphere, and that condensed liquid, once you take out heat from the steam, it will get converted into water, and that water through pump will again feed to the boiler. So that way one cycle will get completed. Okay. Now, if you take the example of heat engine where heat is supplied for the working or conversion of heat into work, it will produce W out. Out of that W out, some work will be used for the application purpose and some work will be absorbed by the system itself. So where that work is absorbed is over here. Just like heat engine, if I consider this whole system here by the combustion of heat, that is Q in, the turbine will be rotated and W will be produced. Okay, out of this W out, this pump needs external work for its working, right? We need to provide some external energy so that this pump can run. So if are considering this isolated system, then the work produced W out, some part of this W out has to be supplied to this pump itself for its working. So this W out is not the actual work that is going to be used for some application. Now W net will be there, and that W net will be the difference between W out and W in, because some part of this W out will be consumed by this pump for its working. So net work output of the system will be equal to W out minus W in, and same is going to be equivalent to this one also, Q in minus Q out. The amount of heat supplied in the boiler and amount of heat rejected in the condenser. If you take difference of those two, you are going to get the W net out. Okay. So for heat engine, if I try to define that performance parameter, this is a heat engine that is taking heat from a reservoir, that is a source, rejecting heat to another reservoir, that is a sink. This is TH, that is T higher. This is TL, that is T lower. So it is taking heat from high temperature source. It is releasing heat to low temperature source and producing net work output. So the relation between this W, heat entering the system, and heat leaving the system, is W net is the difference between this one and this one, because it is taking heat QH from the reservoir for its working, and it is releasing some heat to low temperature reservoir, that is sink, QL. So if I take difference between this QH and QL, that is going to be W net out. So W net out is equal to Q higher minus Q lower. Now instead of this Q higher and Q lower, there could be Q1 heat accepted from the source and Q2 heat rejected to the sink also. So in that case, this relation will become Q1 minus Q2. So that is for work output. Now, if I write the relation for efficiency, efficiency is nothing but output by input, right? That is general relation. Now, in case of heat engine, what is our output? That is W net out. So output by input, the W is the work output or output of the system. So W net out will be numerator, and heat input QH is the input to the system. So denominator is going to be QH. So thermal efficiency will be the ratio of W net by Q heat, Q higher or Q supplied to the system. So alternative relation also could be W by Q1 if you consider this one as Q1. Now this W net out has got relation Q higher minus Q lower. So if I put this Q higher minus Q lower as a numerator and dividing that Q higher and Q lower separately by Q higher, I will get relation N thermal is equal to 1 minus Q lower by Q higher. So this is going to be the relation for thermal efficiency of the heat engine. Now let's solve one small numerical based on that one. There is one heat engine It is taking heat 100 megajoules from a source. It is producing 55 megajoules as a work output. It is also rejecting 45 megajoules to the source, that is low temperature source we can call sink, and over here it is atmosphere. So for this device, if I want to calculate the N thermal or thermal efficiency, what will be its value? The relation is 1 minus Q lower by Q higher. So here Q lower is 45 megajoule, Q higher is 100 megajoule. We have got W also. So either you can use this relation, that is W net out by heat supplied, or 1 minus heat rejected by heat accepted also. Either use this relation or this relation and tell me the value of N thermal. I'll spare a few minutes, calculate and let me know. Very good, Pratik. Anybody else? Post it in a chat window. Very good, Ankit. That is quite simple one. It means that shouldn't be a question also, but just to check your involvement, I have posted this one. So let me know what you get. Only Pratik and Ankit has responded till now. I expect answer from all of you. So at least few more responses has to be there. Yes, Umesh, that is correct. Yes, Shubham, right. Narayan, correct. Aniket, very good. Okay. Others keep posting. Okay, there is one question for you all. From the relation of this efficiency, you calculated N thermal, right? N thermal, it is ratio of 1 minus QL by QH. So you can easily get that lower the amount of QL or higher the amount of QH, efficiency will be maximum, right? Either, or if I want to increase the efficiency of this heat engine, I have two choices. First one, increasing this QH, and second one, decreasing this QL. So increasing this QH means I will have to use high energy source. I may have to burn more amount of fuel, right? On the other hand, if I want to decrease this QL and increase the efficiency, or in other words, if I make this QL is equal to 0, can I attain 100% efficiency? The question is quite straightforward. In the heat engine, you have got two choices to increase the efficiency of the heat engine. Either increase the QH or the temperature of source, or decrease the QL. So the question is, can I make that QL 0 to have 100% efficiency? Will it be possible or not? I would like to know your views on this one. Shubham says no. Okay. Anybody else? Shubham, can you unmute yourself and explain why no? Your answer is correct. But why? You can unmute and respond. Your answer is correct. Yes, Shubham, can you answer that? You have unmuted yourself. Yeah, speak. Why no? Okay, we are not able to hear you. You can mute yourself. I'll explain why no. The answer is correct. We cannot reduce that QL to 0. Why no? The answer is every heat engine must waste some energy transferring to low temperature reservoir in order to complete the cycle. If you are not rejecting heat to the low temperature reservoir, then you are not completing that cycle. And if you are not completing that cycle, you are going to violate the second law of thermodynamics. As long as you are completing cycle, you are going to attain that initial condition, then you are not violating for second law of thermodynamics, and then that device or working of that device will be possible. But if you are not rejecting that heat, you will not complete the cycle, and that way working of that device will not be possible. So in any case, we always need to reject some heat to the low temperature sink. So a heat engine cycle cannot be completed without rejecting heat to a low temperature sink. That is the answer. Okay? Because it is not going to complete the cycle and the device will never work. Okay, so let's discuss the first statement of second law of thermodynamics. As I said, in case of second law of thermodynamics, there are two statements. First one is called as Kelvin-Planck statement, and second one is called as Clausius statement. So the first one is Kelvin-Planck statement. So what this Kelvin-Planck statement says, it is impossible for any device to operate on a cycle to receive heat from a single reservoir and produce a net amount of work. The statement might seem little bit confusing. I will make it simple. Look at this sketch. It is impossible to create any device, or for any device, it is impossible to exchange heat with single reservoir. This is one reservoir from where heat is entering the system, and convert that all heat into useful work. It is not rejecting any heat to the another reservoir that is expected to be at lower temperature, right? So Kelvin Planck state that it is impossible for any device working in a cycle to convert all the heat into useful work. Or in other words, it is not possible for any device to have 100% efficiency. If I say that it is exchanging heat with single reservoir, in other words, it means that it is converting all that heat into useful work. So heat entering is equal to work produced. So if I take ratio of those two, it will be 1, and that is nothing but the 100%. So to have that
हॅलो सर.
100% efficiency, yes, Pratik.
सर ते हीट जे लोअर रिझर्वायरला ट्रान्सफर होती ती डिसिपेटेड हीट आहे ना.
Yeah, dissipated plus heat going out with the like if I talk about the heat engine or internal combustion engine, then heat dissipated as well as heat going out with exhaust gases combined. Is that fine?
Yes sir.
Okay. So to have a real life engine, this QL will never be equal to 0. The QL will always have some value. And if it has some value, then engine will work. If it doesn't have any value or that QL is 0, that engine will never work. Okay. So to have that 100% efficient engine is not possible, and that is nothing but the Kelvin Planck statement. Or to make it simple, the heat in Kelvin Planck statement deals with the heat engine, and the Clausius that we are going to see is going to deal with the or heat Kelvin Planck deals with the conversion of Q into W, the conversion of heat into work, and whereas Clausius talks about the transfer of heat from lower temperature to higher temperature. That Clausius statement we haven't talked up yet, we'll be talking in the future, but you need to remember these two. The Kelvin Planck statement deals with the heat engine, that is conversion of heat into work, whereas Clausius statement deals with the heat transfer, that is from Q lower to Q higher. Okay, so do you have any doubt in the Kelvin Planck statement? It is not possible to construct a device that works with the single reservoir and converts all the heat into useful work. And in other words, the device that has 100% efficiency is not possible. It is impossible to have 100% efficiency heat engine due to, now there are reasons why that is not possible. There is going to be friction, other dissipative effects, and one of the effect is the heat exhausted or heat lost in the form of or with exhaust gases. So if you consider all those heat losses, the efficiency will never be 100%. Is that fine? Any query, any doubt? No query, no doubt? Okay. Now this is a refrigerator and heat pump. So instead of beginning with that, what much time we have left? 4 minutes. So starting this refrigerator and finishing will not be possible. So instead of going for that one, if you have any query in the slides that we have covered till now, we can discuss that. And we'll begin with that refrigerator and heat pump in the next session. I'm changing the slides, so if you have any doubt, you can ask me. If you say any process is possible, the process must satisfy first law as well as second law. If any process is there that is not satisfying either first or second law, that process is not possible. Okay, I'll throw another question to you. We talked over here. Where is that? Yeah. So here I asked about, can we make this QL is equal to 0 to increase the efficiency? So answer is no. So another question is there, can I increase this QH? Because I have two choices, either increase QH or decrease QL. Decreasing QL to 0 is not possible. So can I increase this QH to a maximum extent to increase the efficiency?
Yes, sir.
We can increase, right? So will there be limitations associated, or you can simply increase the QH? म्हणजे सोप्या शब्दामध्ये माझ्याकडे एक आयसी इंजिन आहे किंवा माझ्या टू व्हीलरचं इंजिन आहे, 4 स्ट्रोक इंजिन आहे, ज्याच्यामध्ये पेट्रोल कंबशन करतोय मी आणि मेकॅनिकल वर्क मिळते मला. त्याची मला इफिशियन्सी वाढवायची आहे, म्हणजे ज्या टेम्परेचरला त्याचं कंबशन होत आहे ते टेम्परेचर मला इन्क्रीज करायचं आहे, बरोबर. आय एम इन्क्रीजिंग QH मीन्स I need to increase the temperature of the source. So to what extent the temperature of that engine can be increased? Will there be any additional drawbacks associated with increasing the temperature, or I can simply do that? Or if that is possible, why we are not doing that? Because the efficiency of petrol engine or diesel engine is less than 50%, right? Then why we are not increasing that QH to increase that efficiency above 50%, like 60, 70?
It will depend on the material.
Very good. Yes, that was the answer that I was expecting. Anything else? If I increase
How much heat the material can sustain.
Exactly. If I increase the temperature, the material that has been used for building that engine should be capable of withstanding that generated temperature, or else that material itself will start getting soft, or even in worst case may start melting, and in that case engine will not work. So that is the limitation why we cannot increase the QH to a maximum value to increase the efficiency. Okay, very good, Pratik.